All right, folks, we're going old school. It's been a while since I did a hyper nerdy optic review, and it's about time. So we are going to compare the SIG Oscar6 HD Pro against the Swarovski AT Balance. Both of these are imaged stabilized spotters. Now, I have not made my feelings about image stabilized spotters secret. Personally, I do not see them as the game-changing device that the binoculars were, and I question the decision to put them in your arsenal at all. However, I do think there's a couple unique use cases where they can be very beneficial, and if you're gonna buy one, I wanna help you buy the right one. So before we dive into the review, let's look at the specs. For price, the SIG comes in at $2,000 USD and the Swaro at $4,000 USD. SIG has a magnification range of 16 to 32x and the AT Balance of 18 to 45x. One small note on this, the straight balance has a zoom range of 14 to 35x. Objective lens size, 60mm for the SIG, 65mm for the Swaro. Both systems weigh exactly 3 pounds, 6 ounces. SIG uses 2 AA batteries, while Swaro has a proprietary rechargeable battery system, but at least it includes 2 batteries. Field of view on the SIG is 141 feet at 1,000 yards for 16 power, and the Swaro is 165 feet at 1,000 yards at 18 power, which gives it the notably superior field of view. So the only way to actually compare any optic, in my opinion, but especially these two optics, is by recording footage in a very particular way and then examining that footage back later on a screen. I think anyone who thinks that you can stick your head in one optic, lift out, stick your head in another optic, and then form some kind of objective conclusion is kind of out to lunch, to be honest with you. I think you have to have the ability to put 2 identically recorded images side by side if you really want to draw an objective conclusion. So, further to that, all of the clips that you're going to see in this video were recorded in RAW on an iPhone 17 Pro Max. Those clips then had the exact same white balance adjustment done to all of them, and they had 1 LUT applied to all of them. I'm not going to get into the complexities of LUT. What you need to understand is that there was no computational videography done to these clips. So if you just stick your iPhone on regular recording and put it on one of these, you are not going to be comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges, because the phone is going to be interpolating the data that comes into it and giving you its best guess or its best attempt at making the best footage that it can. When you record in RAW and apply the same LUT and the same white balance to all the footage, then you can say with absolute certainty that you are looking at apples to apples footage from 2 different spotters. So keep that in mind moving forward. Also, we're gonna make sure to upload this one in 4K. Even if you don't have a 4K TV, I want you to go to the little bottom of the YouTube window and click this over into as high a definition as possible, because some of the differences between these spotters are so minor that I need you watching the best quality footage as possible so you can see what I saw when I was at home in my editing bay examining the footage recorded on these 2 spotters. There's one other thing I want to note about optics reviews. Like I said, we're going to get hyper nerdy on this one, and we're literally going to be looking at pixel by pixel performance of these 2 things. So while I may come to a conclusion about which one is superior, I also don't want to necessarily make you think that's going to make you find more critters. I want to be able to tell you which of these is better. But the real question that we'll address at the end of the review is there a clear difference about which one is actually going to perform better as a tool for hunting? And even if one is better, Is it gonna help you find more critters or not?
All right, folks, sorry to interrupt the review, but I have two big pieces of information that I know you're gonna wanna hear. Number one, I am giving away a Kowa 88mm spotter, which is, in my opinion, the single best spotting scope you can have for backcountry hunting. So in order to get entered to win this spotting scope, you can do it one of two ways. Number one, you can go to forgedinthebackcountry.com. Every $5 you spend will get you one entry to win. Secondly, and this is the real big piece of news, Mindful Munitions is officially open. So we have high quality hunting gear at fair prices for Canadians in Canada with Canadian shipping, no duties, no customs nonsense, nothing. Straight to the consumer from a Canadian distributor in Canada. The giveaway is running until October 30th at midnight Pacific time. Between now and then, everything that you purchase on either forgedinthebackcountry.com or mindfulmunitions.com will get you one entry to win this spotting scope. I could not be more excited to launch Mindful Munitions, and I can't wait to give away this spotting scope. So good luck to everybody.
Okay, so for the visual comparison, we're gonna break these down into several categories. Now, the first category is gonna be optical quality, and we're gonna do that first with stabilization off. All right, we've got the SIG at 18 power on the left and the Swaro at 18 power on the right. And I will be honest, at 18 power, it is hard to draw any real firm conclusions. You've got the exit pupils wide open. This was a nice brightly lit day. These objects are about 1,500 yards away. I would say the Swaro looks sharper. I would also say the yellows are a little bit cleaner. The SIG almost has a bit of an orange hue to it. The letters that you can see in your upper left-hand corner are marginally sharper with a slightly crisper outline. So now we still have stabilization off. We're looking at SIG at 32 on the left, Swaro at 32 on the right, and now we can really start to see some differences. Look at the number 28 in the left-hand corner. Definitely crisper outlines on the Swaro. If you look at those parallel yellow lines heading up on like a 60-degree angle behind the letters, definitely sharper in the Swaro. Your shadows are crisper. I'm even seeing more details in lines of the hand railings behind. Swaro doesn't walk away with it, but there's definitely a noticeable mild to moderate difference for sure. All right, now what I've done is zoom into 300% at 32x. And here we really start to see the Swaro kind of walk away. For one, you're gonna notice the mirage is actually more significant in the SIG on the left hand of the screen. It's also not nearly as bright as the Swaro. So while it's midday right now, you could imagine if this was twilight hour, the performance of the Swaro would definitely be superior to the SIG here. I will say I'm still surprised. I think for the price difference, the SIG is definitely holding its own. So I'll make the same comment I made before. There's no doubt the Swaro is superior optically, but it's not by as great of a margin as I would have thought. So as far as optical quality goes, it's very clear to see the Swarovski definitely has the better glass. Now let's look at stabilization. All right, here we've got stabilization on, SIG on the left, Swaro on the right. Now I've drawn some conclusions, but I just want you to watch these for a couple seconds and see if you can notice a difference in how these move. And I just want you to keep those thoughts to yourself while we watch this. I would say overall, they are functionally equivalent at 18x. You could use either one of these and they're basically behaving fairly comparably. Now, let's bump up the magnification to 32x and see if there's any other conclusions we can draw. Do you notice how much more fluid the transitions are on the SIG on the left? What I noticed with the Swaro, like see those herky kind of jerky movements it just did? It's almost like a camera that's searching for autofocus. I think the algorithm in Swaro is fundamentally different than the one in SIG. Where SIG is looking at an entire area, I think Swaro is trying to find specific objects. It produces this jumpy kind of erratic movement where at some points the object of interest will be held perfectly still, but then it kind of jumps out. It's almost like, I don't know if any archers have target panic. This happens to rifle people as well. But if you try and force your pin onto a target, you end up kind of chasing it around. And that's what the movement of the Swaro kind of reminds me of. So before we draw our full conclusions, there's one more video example I want to look at. Okay, these are both Swaro because the SIG doesn't even go all the way up to 45x. But now look at how gross the movements are at 45. Like they really are these aggressive kind of jumps. Like it's in center, it's stabilized, and then it'll jump up, and then it jumps down, and then goes back to the center. And so this kind of jerkiness to the algorithm is really exacerbated at 45x. And this is one of my reasons why I find it hard to come up with a compelling argument to own an image stabilized spotter in the first place. I'm kind of shocked to be saying this, but in my opinion, SIG wins for the actual stabilization. Again, functionally, I don't know if one of them is going to make you find any more animals than the other. But I will tell you, when hand holding these, the SIG feels much easier to hold on target because it's not making these big erratic movements that then your mind tries to counteract, which actually ends up making it worse because you end up overcompensating. Whereas the SIG, because it's much smaller fluid movements, your hands are just more comfortable kind of holding the optic relatively stable. So yeah, I gotta give the nod to SIG for stabilization. I will say it's such a close battle. This could also just be a matter of preference. So I'm willing to admit some people might just prefer the Swaro, but I would have to say objectively, based on this video evidence, SIG has the superior stabilization mechanisms. So the last thing that I want to touch on about optical quality and stabilization, a lot of people seem to be curious whether there was a difference in optical quality between when the stabilization was on versus when it was off. So now what we're going to do is pull up two screenshots. Here is an image from the SIG at 32x with stabilization on the left-hand side and stabilization off on the right-hand side. You can zoom in as much as you want on either of these images. I've done it several times, and I can confirm beyond a shadow of a doubt that these two images are completely identical. So before we draw any conclusions, let's hop over and see if the same is true of the Swaro. Now, we're looking at the Swaro at 32x, stabilization on left-hand side, stabilization off right-hand side. Again, these two images are literally identical. Pixel peep as much as you want, they're the same. So what's the explanation for that? Because most people will report poorer optical quality with stabilization on. Well, here's the thing. That's actually fundamentally impossible because the image is going through the exact same optical chain in both scenarios. The only difference is the prism is moving on a gimbal to counteract the movement of the housing of the spotter when stabilization is turned on. So because it's traveling through the same objective, the same ocular, and the same prism, the optical image has to be identical. I think the explanation comes from the fact that when an image is moving and your eye is trying to capture that data, you actually have less time to capture that data, or your attention is being drawn to several parts of the image at once. And therefore, you perceive it as being a lower quality image when the image is moving than when it is stationary. Yet again, more evidence to support my conclusion that I don't necessarily think image stabilized spotters are a necessary tool in your toolkit. All right, next category is wind performance, because when these first came out, that was the area where I thought there was the most potential for these to really be a disruptive piece of technology. If you have ever tried to age a sheep or sex a goat at 1,000 to 1,500 yards in a really strong wind, you will lose your mind because your spotter is vibrating all over the place. And I thought to myself, if an image stabilizing spotter could solve that, now that would be a fundamental argument about why to buy one. Unfortunately, based on my research thus far, unfortunately there's no wind on this day, so I don't have side-by-side footage to give you. I have not found any image stabilized spotter, and I've reviewed 3 of them so far, to be able to counteract the effects of wind. Here's my potential explanation why. I think the movements are too fine and they're too fast. The algorithms and the hardware inside these spotters are meant to counteract the movements of being handheld, which are kind of like these slow, gross movements that go like this. So the gimbal is designed to move like that inside. When you have wind shake, it's more like a vibration. And I've done several tests where I've put these on tripods and then I've just tapped the tripod leg repeatedly, which visually almost replicates perfectly the effect of wind. And that's one thing where I can say objectively in head-to-head tests, neither of these have been able to reduce wind shake. There's video footage of that in a kite optics spotter that I did a long time ago. So unfortunately, based on the results of my testing, I would say that neither of these spotters has the ability to significantly reduce the effect of wind shake in your spotter. All right, last category, field ergonomics. I'm gonna tell you this one kind of surprised me as well, because Swaro is known for some of the best ergonomics in the business. I love their ATS spotter. I love their ATX spotter. I love how compact everything is. I love how easily it fits in my pack. I love the focus wheel, all of it. But I will tell you, after multiple tests and using both of these spotters in the field extensively, SIG for me wins hands down. When you go to grab this thing, I don't know if it's like old school because it feels like a telescope, like a pirate would use, but it's easy to grab it by the body. You can zoom in and out with your right hand, or you can move up and adjust the focus. And there's a nice amount of tension on both of these, so that even if you have your hand on here, it's not like they're gonna move accidentally. And I think for hand holding a spotter, the straight spotter is definitely my preference because you're looking at something and you look at it. Now, when you pick up the Swaro, the first thing you're gonna do is grab it like this. And there is almost no resistance to this focus wheel. So what kept happening to me, even when I was recording, I probably had to, those sections of video you watch, I bet you I had to record them 15 times with the Swaro, because I would get the phone on it, I would get everything set up, I would hit record, and the first thing I would do is I would grab the spotter by the body and I'd adjust the focus and I'd lose focus. And I'd have to start everything all over again. And when you grab it way up here, your fingers end up going in front of the body and you can't hold on to it back here because now your fingers, and it's like this like Chinese finger trap of like, where do I put my hands on this thing so I can hold it without changing the focus or the zoom? And these things are so easy that like just the slightest movement and they turn on you. And also there's something very unnatural about looking down and then holding something. Like your brain has issues coordinating the movements of your hands to get the thing to stay in focus when your head is not aligned. And I think there's just something much more natural about like, I'm looking that way, so I move this way, as opposed to looking this way and seeing things move out there. So given the fact that they both weigh exactly 3 pounds, 6 ounces, I gotta give the ergonomics and field use portion 100% to SIG. And in fact, for me, it's not even a competition on this one. So Here's what everybody wants to know. If I was gonna tell you to buy one of these, which one would I tell you to buy? This is actually a very easy decision for me. Buy the SIG. If you gotta have an image stabilized spotter, the optical quality is not quite as good, but at half the price for maybe a 15% reduction in optical quality, I think it's well worth it. I prefer the stabilization mechanisms. I prefer the ergonomics, and it's literally half the cost. So here's the benefit of the Swaro. It does go all the way up to 45x. The SIG stops at 32x, which is not a ton of reach for a spotter. So if this was gonna be your only spotter, that might be an issue for some people. And if you were gonna be your only spotter, but the Swaro went up to 45 and you were gonna use it mostly off of a tripod anyways, I suppose I could see the argument. My problem then is that if you're already gonna use the spotter mostly off of a tripod and you're already gonna spend $4,000, there's way better spotters to buy for $4,000. You can take this $2,000 SIG and compare it against other $2,000 non-image stabilized spotters, and this SIG will go toe to toe. Although it is a little bit heavier, the optical quality and the rest of the ergonomics stand up. So yeah, there's my thoughts. It's pretty rare when Swaro steps into an optics battle and loses, but I feel pretty confident in my recommendation on this one. If you want an image stabilized spotter, personally, I'd go with the SIG.